Hey there, my name is Jason Bradley. You may recognize my voice from such places as the Community Solutions Podcast, which, by the way, you're listening to now. Before we begin, can I bend your ear for just a moment? We want to bring you the very best in quality and information each week. You can help us achieve that level of greatness. If you sell something, want to announce something, or try to convince others to vote for you, consider advertising on the Community Solutions Podcast. You can email us at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com, and we'd love to help you tell everyone about what you do. Once again, that's commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. Let us be your solution to increased sales. We thank you ahead of time for your consideration. Okay, enough yammering. On with the show. We're cash, you're borrowing. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Welcome once again. It's a fantastic week, and as always, Andrew Richter is here with me.
Jay, always a pleasure. Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
I went to the doctor a couple of weeks ago with a problem in my brain. Okay, my brain was screwed up. I had double vision. I had bad headaches, and we did some testing, and the doctor said there's nothing wrong with your brain. It's all in your head. Perfect.
Oh boy.
Oh,
You've been working on that one all week, or what?
Pretty much. That blind carpenter picked up his hammer and saw. I've been working on them all week.
Wow. Oh boy.
Yeah,
That's all right. We better move on. It's late, and I can tell by your jokes it's late. As you know, we got our start in the fabulous city of Crystal, Minnesota, and we've been talking about a lot of things that affect the state of Minnesota. Out in greater Minnesota, we've been talking about the different suburbs, like New Brighton. We've been talking about what's been happening up at Forest Lake. It's time for us to return to our roots for a moment. And we want to do this for you guys, not so that you can get bored and shut off the podcast. We want you to hear what's possible when people get involved in their community and start to make changes, because that's what really this is all about. And I think when we did the New Brighton podcast last week, that really kind of spurred that in us, that feeling that, man, they are where we were, 8 years ago.
I tell you what, and it was honestly, when you and I have talked about it a million times, when you and I had that petition rejected, and, the former mayor looked me in the eye and told me if I didn't like what was happening in the city, go move to the middle of nowhere. I got to tell you, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I've ever said this publicly before, I didn't think we'd get to where we are right now. I mean, I didn't think we could. There's an old adage, you can't fight City Hall. And there were a lot of times I wanted to give up. I'll be honest. And I didn't think that what has happened in Crystal over the last decade was going to happen. I mean, if I had to lay a bet, I don't know what I would have done. I mean, I wanted it to happen. But I think, you talked about how, where do you get started? What happens? And the people in New Brighton were a great example of that, about how the frustration is boiling over, and there's so many similarities that we see, from arrogant people on the council, city staff with their own agenda, unaccountable to anybody, comp plan that's out of control. I mean, plans to tear down this, but they deny it in public. I mean, the same shenanigans that were going on. It's almost like the old council's been like reincarnated and moved to New Brighton or something. You really feel for the people we had on last week, and the what happened in Crystal. It's so important we tell this story, but not just how the West was won, but what happens, because the work starts then. Campaigning is one thing, governing they're two separate things.
Exactly, and that was the big charge from the prior council as they were leaving. You guys don't know how to govern. You guys are going to mess it all up. You guys are going to level the city hall and sell it for a parking lot to the church across the street, whatever it was. It just crazy town kind of stuff.
Hey, there was a rumor that the city manager was going to be fired and I was going to be appointed. That's how crazy it got.
That I
is
remember
on a blog. Okay,
I remember that.
So, I mean, we definitely got them crazier than ever, I have to say.
Oh, my word. So, it's not going to be just the two of us again this week. We have a special guest for y'all because, it's one thing to hear us tell the story, but let's get the story straight out of the horse's mouth. Mayor Jim Adams of Crystal, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me tonight.
Good. Well, we all know that Andrew has not been appointed the city manager, and in fact, just verify for me, you still have the same city manager, right?
We still have the same city manager.
Okay,
yes.
I just
Sky
wanted to
hasn't
check.
fallen. Okay.
No, City Hall still stands, right?
Even if we had a new city manager, things would still be okay. I mean, we can operate either way.
Okay.
We have a solid group of people there.
Wow. Well, a lot has taken place since the new council has kind of come in the last 3 years, and you've been able to have a little more freedom to do the things that you want to do because you're not fighting the existing power structure that was kind of clinging to the old ways.
Yes. I think you're putting it mildly. It was actually worse than that.
Well, enlighten us.
We were a dysfunctional council, and that's all we were. And it didn't allow for any type of function to happen between the council and the staff itself. So not only were we dysfunctional in the council, we weren't working with staff, and what carried the day were personal attacks, to just infighting within the council, and that's all that happened.
Now, Jim, you're talking about your first 2 years.
Talking about the first 2 years, yeah.
We should say, for people who don't know, Jim was elected in 2012, and from 2012 to 2014 is what you're talking about the 2 years of headbutting.
Yes.
Then new members came in in 2014, and then 2016 we had a few new people. You were reelected, and the council that we have right now.
Yeah. So we had 3 new people come in at that election. Totally changed everything. No longer were we infighting. We actually had a direction to go. The new people who came in brought their own ideas, as well as supporting some of my own ideas. And they literally kind of drove the direction of the city that first year when they were in office. I had a hard time trusting them, even though I knew who they were, just because that was a place of conflict for me. It was a place of attacks, and it took me about 6 months to figure out, what? I know these people, I know their hearts, I can work with them. And after about 6 months, we started actually implementing what we wanted to have.
Well, 2 years of abuse will do that to you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, there literally was that recovery period. So, we have changed things dramatically based on our finances, based on how we treat people, based on how we treat citizens. Our size of government, I think, is shrinking. Number of ordinances are shrinking. Just a lot of things that are very positive from a perspective of a citizen.
Well, that's great, and I think we should talk about a lot of that today. Why don't we start with some of those changes at a personal level, from a couple of standpoints. One is you instituted some rules in the way that you treat each other, but then also you have changed the way that you approach people who violate city codes, where the old council would just say, you broke the law, here's the penalty. And you guys handle it a little differently, according to Nancy LaRoche in a recent interview that I had heard with her. So can you enlighten us a little bit on both of those?
On how we enforce violations, it's the punishment has to fit the crime. It's not we're automatically going to throw the book at you. And that's been the big change. A lot of the ordinances that do have penalties or fines, we've modified them so that we're not leading the metro area with the highest fines and the worst punishments. We've scaled them back a little bit. A lot of those can become an emotional issue, because people will think, well, we don't want our children to drink, and we have to discourage anybody who's going to serve them. We don't want them smoking, so we have to throw the book at them so they know we're serious. That used to be the rule of the day. It's not that. It's okay. Let's be effective. Let's enforce our ordinances, but let's not put them out of business. Mm-hmm. First, look, if we have somebody who's going to be a repeat offender, of course, naturally it's going to accelerate, and that acceleration kind of takes care of that issue.
Well, it's the realization that everything's not so black and white. Mm-hmm.
Right.
When I know from the city code changes when I was on the task force for a year that we helped push, and I know you're still going through those. Right. It's a long process to change that, and city codes need a first reading, a second reading, that kind of thing. It was a thing we wrestled with. One of the things they had in the code, and I don't want to get too specific here, but there was something about you have a violation, you get a fine. Every day is a different crime. Now the point I made was, if I escape from jail, I'm gone 30 days. I'm not charged with 30 crimes. It's one.
Right.
And that was a big discussion that we had. I know the councils had discussions like that too, that, there has to be, circumstances have to be taken into account. Right. And I think you're right. I think previously there was any kind of violation, previous councils didn't want to hear.
Right,
but they didn't care or anything.
Another place that shows up is in our rental policies and how we enforce our rental code. If somebody did not get their rental license in place, they got a fine, and it makes sense. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. They're supposed to pay for their license and renew that, when it's due.
Every year, I think.
Yeah. And what we do in Crystal, and we still do it, however, we're still working with it. We're still trying to manipulate things. But it's not a fine. It's not like a small percentage. It's a doubling of the fee. It's very punitive. So we're trying to get away from things that are get away from the punitive piece of it and just make it what it's supposed to be, a friendly reminder fine, something that's not going to just double your expenses.
Or deter a business or something like that, too.
Correct. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify for those of you who are looking for something in this discussion, that this does not carry over to crime, to violent crime, to robberies, assaults, things like that. Those things are still punished to the full extent of the law, and those are handled in court. Those are not city issues per se. This is strictly, businesses or homeowners that are found in violation of a city code.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's just a different approach. We have staff now who are making phone calls to landlords to give them a reminder, hey, it's due, we haven't received it yet. So there's a little bit of grace, but then if the grace doesn't happen, then the full extent of the ordinance does get implemented. Mm-hmm. But so we got a little bit of work to do there as far as making it not quite as punitive, but we're making progress. In the whole attitude of staff and working with landlords and tenants, it's become, how can we help? The attitude is, how can we help? Not, this is the ordinance. This is the ordinance. Exactly. Yeah. So there's a huge change in how staff are treating people.
One of the big changes that happened, I know it was a few years ago, but the housing in new home sale inspection.
Point of sale inspection.
Point of sale.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of it all day. You guys repealed that a couple of years ago, 2 years ago,
right.
Maybe, 2015. Right. Can just take a second, Jim? Can you explain point of sale? What is it? Why was it repealed? Why was it an issue? What was the council's thinking behind getting rid of that ordinance? That had been there a long time, Crystal.
Yes. A point of sale inspection is an inspection that is done by the city inspectors to make sure that everything is code compliant, making sure that it's a decent...
When there's a sale.
When there's a sale. Okay. When you sell your house, we come in, we say, well, fix these items, these are subpar, and you have to fix them. If you don't fix them, the new person coming in will be required to fix them. So what happened is... people would say, okay, a point of sale inspection was done. They don't bother getting an inspection a private inspector to come in and say, this system's good, that system's good, and all of that. They rely on the inspection that the city did. Well, the city has all the disclaimers in the world that says we are not qualified to do these system checks. So if we miss something, it's not our problem, it's your problem. You're still responsible to do your private inspection. So the tendency was that people were starting to rely on this where they shouldn't be. And that's just false. So to us, it was a duplication of effort. We weren't adding any service. We weren't adding any real expertise. So why are we doing it? You know,
and people had to pay for it, too.
Yes.
Right. Remember, this isn't free.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And you add to it that a lot of people do have a lot of banks even require it now, that you have a private inspector. So if somebody had to have a private, then they'd have to pay for you guys to do it too, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they were paying for 2 inspections. And it got even a little bit more weird because the inspectors realized they couldn't do the system checks. They couldn't check all the electrical. They couldn't check all the plumbing. They couldn't check all the HVAC. So what they would do to try and kind of transfer and become more thorough is they would require a plumber to come in and certify the plumbing system, have an electrician come in and certify the electrical system. And
they don't take their tools out for less than $200.
Well, that's not even it. If I am asked by a city as a contractor to certify something, what am I certifying to? Am I going back to when it was built? No, all my work done is to current code.
Right.
So you have contractors coming in and say, well, that's not code. Well, that's not code. Well, that's not code. So all of a sudden there's this extraordinary list of things that really don't need to be done. But the contractor says, well, if I touch it, I have to do this, this, and this, and this. And it's current code, not the stuff that's been grandfathered in when it was built in 1965.
So why was it there in the first place? I mean, what's the thinking behind?
Well, there's two.
What were the argument? What did you run up against? For arguments to keep it
for the safety of the public.
Oh,
safety of the public. But yet we offered no added benefit. There was no added value, and we really couldn't offer the safety.
It's the old adage: if the government does it, then it's always right. There's some people who just have that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
But when right before this happened, a friend of mine sold their house, and after they got done with the point of sale inspections, they had well over $20,000 worth of repairs coming from the contractor, the plumber, the electrician. So any type of profit that they thought they would have, most of it was gobbled up by those expenses. And that's just adding expense to a house that really shouldn't cost that much.
Yeah, and discouraging people from buying a home in the city, too.
And when you talk about affordable housing, well, now we're adding more value to our houses in Crystal. It's more affordable because we don't have that added expense that's just not necessary. It's a big deal.
That's great. So going back to the other part of that question then, so the rules that you put in play, like amongst yourselves to kind of change the tenor of things in the council, can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. That was brought in by one of our new council members, Jeff Kolb. He kind of was the architect for that. And what we really wanted to accomplish was to go into city council meetings and do city business and not get caught up on the minutia of all the big things that are happening nationally, the big things that are happening statewide, things that really just don't fit in the conversation for a city. We deal with roads, we deal with police, fire. We don't have to worry about some of the other things that are going on. We don't have a whole lot of welfare issues or those types of things to deal with. So, you can pick any particular given day that they designate nationally, and cities are spending their time trying to promote that cause, make awareness on this cause, and we wanted to get away from that. So those rules were designed to keep us doing business, keep us being more efficient. And as far as treating each other, it was designed also to make sure that we treat each other respectfully. And if that isn't happening, it's my job just to say, look, we have rules about conduct in this in this body. Let's follow these rules. So things are now more specific to Crystal, and they're more specific to business, and a lot less personal attacks.
Wow.
We disagree all the time, but at the end of the council meetings now, you're not angry because you were heard, you were listened to, you weren't personally attacked. You may have lost your position and maybe you're a little upset about that, but it's not about Jim Adams is a blah 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 and he wants these horrible things to happen. Okay, great. That's really going to serve the citizens.
Any way we could put those rules into the Environmental Quality Commission?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
All right.
I think that's gonna grow as well. I think there will need to be some changes made there as well.
I'm going to keep my mouth shut about that.
Okay. Sorry, inside joke, guys.
I get it.
Me too.
I won't get anybody else in trouble. We'll move on. So that's good. So we've had a lot of changes that have happened in Crystal in this amount of time. That's some of the basic stuff there. You had mentioned, Andrew, the code task force, the citizen code task force. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the ordinances that I don't know if any of us have been able to follow that as closely as we would like. Things that have either been repealed or you're discussing them being repealed. Because it seems like we're moving towards having more freedom in Crystal.
Oh my gosh, the ordinances are well over 3 inches thick.
Yeah.
Or they were. And there's more ordinances than we have citizens. You guys know this. You guys have talked about it. I'm probably stealing your quote.
Yeah.
But
Well, I know that my royalty check's in the mail.
yeah. Sorry, I'm afraid not. But the bottom line is we had an awful lot of things that just they don't apply to today's city, to today's world. And we've had those stripped out. We have some things that have been added on to and then added on to again and added on to even some more with different twists, and we end up with these 3-page ordinances for something that can be done in a paragraph. So a lot of the things that are changing are making the verbiage more clear, making it more streamlined, so actually a non-lawyer can understand it. Actually, citizens of Crystal can actually understand what they have to do. They don't have to go through law school. So you can now have a pool table in the city, in the community center. We've had a pool table in there for many years, but it's been illegal the whole time. So a lot of these things, they need to be fixed. We're hoping someday soon that we're going to have some clotheslines in Crystal that will actually be legal. So yeah, just silly things like that. As far as adding more freedom, there's a lot of redundancies and there's a lot of rules that we just didn't understand why they were put in place. And the Code Task Force took it upon themselves to have those debates and figure out, well, okay, what was the original intent? Is the original intent still valid? And really, quite honestly, it was the citizens and the people of that group that made those changes live.
And I can speak to that too. You know, one of the great things about that task force, and to anybody out there who's stupid enough to think all we did was move around periods and semicolons, yeah, you know who I'm talking to. I know you're listening. You know, one of the great things about it was that we were not told necessarily by the council, this is the outcome we want. You know, Jim's right. We really did this is something that, you know, when we talked to the city attorney, you know, that really hadn't been done in the state of Minnesota. They couldn't find a city that had a task force to go through the city code. Right. So it was kind of, it's something that I'm hoping other cities take upon themselves to do. And I think as you guys, you know, keep passing this stuff and going through it. And like I said, it takes a lot to change the city code. There's a first reading, a second reading, and you want people to be able to talk to you about it, and you don't want to rubber stamp what a commission does. I know you guys don't, but it was great to be part of a task force or a commission where, you know, it was like, look, here's this. You guys go through it and,
See what we think.
And there was a lot of debate. There were a lot of differences of opinion, but it was a lot like you're describing the council. Nobody walked out of there mad or angry. Everybody looked at that city code and went, oh, geez. It was like we're all kind of had a different path to get there, but we were all kind of on the same page that this had to be reduced and updated.
Yeah. We're currently in the area of things that rule residents and who can live where, and I don't even remember which chapter it is, but I own real estate and I've been a landlord since 1992, and there's some things that I really, really wanted to see changed, which promote freedom, which promote people living in their own property and being able to do the things they want to do there, as long as it's not jeopardizing their neighbors. I mean, why not? So a lot of the things that I would have wanted to beat my drum and fix came out of that task force already done. I didn't have to say a word.
Just think how long it would have taken the council to go through and argue which you would have done first.
Well, and it's a different thing if the mayor says something, because if the mayor says something, well, okay, what's his interest? Okay, let's dissect this and figure out. I didn't have to say a word. Yeah. It was changed on its merits. It wasn't because I had bias. It was changed by other people. I didn't have to say a word. I went home after that particular meeting, and I was just grinning the whole time home. It's like, wow, did that really just happen? And it did. It was awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we change gears?
Sure.
Yes.
Let's change gears and let's talk about my favorite subject, money.
Ooh.
I like money.
Yeah.
All right. There's been a lot of completely different approach by this council towards some of the fiscal issues in Crystal. Whether we're at the end of this street reconstruction phase, which has been going on over 20 years in Crystal, that's been paid for by assessing people. There's some money comes from the street reconstruction fund, some money comes from MSA money from the state. But the burden of it has been put on homeowners, property owners, businesses to do that. Jim, can you just explain just a little bit, real quick, about, what are these assessments? We're in the last one now. What's the plan for roads in the future in the city? What's the vision? I know there's a mill and overlay that is supposed to be done on these streets after a certain time to extend the life or whatever. I don't know anything about streets, so it's just talk about that whole issue, just generally speaking.
Okay. Assessments, that's one of my passions. Assessments are how for the last 25 years we've been paying for these street reconstructions. Now keep in mind, we're going to talk about a couple things here. We're going to talk about street reconstruction and street maintenance, which is the mill and overlay. Two completely separate things.
So just to backtrack a second, Crystal is divided into all these sections. And every year or every other year, because of the MSA money, we can only take so much. A part of the neighborhood, if you will, has been their streets dug up and redone.
Correct.
Okay,
Sewer, everything. Yeah. Sewer, water.
Whole kit and caboodle.
Not just the tar, not just the surface, or not just...
If you didn't have a curb, you got one now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So that happened in the mid-'90s, and it took an awful lot of pulling of teeth because this was like a new tax at the time. People thought, well, isn't my tax levy? Don't I already pay property taxes to pay for these streets? Well, of course everybody thinks that. That's one of the functions of city government. Well, back then they created the assessment, and the assessment is taking that money and charging it to the residents. So they pay for their street in front of them, their curb in front of them, and they get a bill. And it started in the early times, probably the bill was about $2,000, $3,000 for a street reconstruction. Now this last one, we're in phase 16. Our final one is happening this summer. some of the assessments are close to $10,000. Now, we've done some things in the past few years to try to prepare citizens. We've started giving them, okay, last year's assessments for an average homeowner was this. Yours is going to come next year, so if you would like to pay cash for it, you may want to start planning and saving money. So we've done some things proactively so it wasn't such a shock, but bottom line is a lot of people living in Crystal, if they get a $10,000 assessment, they're not going to have the money, even if we gave them 2 years' notice to pay that bill. So ultimately, that bill goes on their payroll, or not their payroll, their property taxes. So that increases their monthly payment. If they're using if they're paying a mortgage, it will go right on top of that. If they're paying it directly, it just gets increased so many dollars a year for that. So it becomes a big deal, especially if you're on fixed income. So what we're doing now that we've had everything reconstructed, we won't have to reconstruct any roads for 20, 30, 35, 40 years, but we will have the maintenance piece. Well, before my time, they tried to instill assessments on the maintenance.
So if you got done paying for your road after 15 years, thought you were finished, bang, there was another bill.
Bang, there was another bill.
Yeah.
You got a mill and overlay. They cut off the top layer of your tar, and they laid down a new layer of tar. And wouldn't you know it, the maintenance for that in the first phase was $3,000. Equivalent to a street reconstruction that they had, 25 years before. Mm-hmm. So the inflation and the cost of it it doesn't change these numbers. They're still big numbers. I mean, I know wages haven't changed that much, but the cost of this construction has increased dramatically. So we have gotten rid of assessments on maintenance. The first phase, as it were, the first phase of street reconstruction was also the first phase of the maintenance. And we weren't able to convince the council at the time, it was the other council, to eliminate the assessments. And in fact, they argued with me, nope, this is the way we've always done it. We did it once before, so now we've got to do this forever. It's not quite how it went, but pretty darn close.
Yeah, that's pretty much a 2-year assessment of how it went.
Right, yeah. But that's government.
You summed it up in 10 seconds.
Yeah. That's government, though. Once you start doing something one way, that's the way it will go forever. It will never go back to the way it was until they come up with a better way to do it.
But, that was such a thing. I know that one of the things I complained about, one of the things Jason complained about, it was one of the things that motivated us to get going is this. When you press why something's being done or paid for a certain way, the answer you get is, well, this is the way it's always been. I mean, how hard is it to cut through that force field?
Yeah. Well, take a look at St. Paul. St. Paul started assessing for maintenance stuff, or you know that story, right?
I've heard. I don't know the details, but
I don't know a lot of the details either. But they had to stop doing the assessments because it wasn't lawful. It's arguably not lawful to do street maintenance on the assessment. We're a charter city, so we have that latitude. We can designate it as something we do, and that's kind of what we had done in the past. But a city that's not a charter city, that would be unlawful for us to do that. So we were doing something that in a lot of places is unlawful. And for me, it's just unconscionable that we would charge maintenance as an assessment, because an assessment's a big deal. You pay for the project. You pay for the administration of the project, the administration of the financing, because what they do is they usually go out and get bonding, debt, a credit card. They put it on the credit card, and then somebody's got to administer that, and somebody's got to administer how we put it on everybody's property tax. And
so it's going to the banker.
So it's going to the banker, it's going to administrators, and it's just a fraction of the amount actually goes to the project. That doesn't happen in Crystal anymore. We put an end to the assessments, and now every dollar that gets spent for a maintenance, this is just really weird. You got a maintenance project, and you actually have every dollar go towards the maintenance project? Weird. Just weird.
Groundbreaking.
Wow.
You mentioned the city charter, and I'll just kind of go off because that's one of my favorite things. Is I mean, is it a charter change something that you guys are going to talk about? I mean, is it, because one of my fears is, even though I don't live in Crystal anymore, is all the changes we're making, all the things we're doing, there's no law that says they can't be undone.
Right.
There's no law that says the council in 8 years, when maybe none of you are there anymore, maybe not, is just going to say, oh, well, we did this once back. Let's just do it. It's so easy
It's so easy to do.
To just pass this. It's a hidden tax. Nobody sees it till next year. I mean, is changing the charter and maybe being more specific about what projects can be assessed and what can't, what can you borrow for and what can't you, rather than just kind of having it be sort of at any council's whim.
All right, so
I know it's not easy to change.
You're
just saying, is that something that you guys?
It's something that
think about?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's something that I want to do. It's something that I haven't addressed with the council specifically. I've addressed it with them generally, and the point is not yet. Let's get through the street reconstruction. We have to get through the actual street reconstruction project, and now when we're done with that, which it will be the end of
this fall.
This fall. I mean, we'll have a top course next year. But now we're done with this scheduled assessment stuff. And
25 years from back.
Yep, right. 25 years of it.
They just laid my asphalt today. It's going great. So
good.
So what's going to happen is, for sure, on the maintenance piece of it, I want to make that as illegal as state that this is not legal in Crystal to use assessments for maintenance. Street reconstruction, I don't know that I'm not sure if I would love to make it illegal. I just don't know if it's practical.
Well, and the council has to have some flexibility too. I mean,
it goes to what you said. There's a future council, and they're going to have to be able to do what they want to do. But what we're trying to institute here is we're trying to replace any kind of debt with future planning. So when in 30 years we want to do street reconstruction again, we've actually saved money the prior 30 years to pay for it, so we don't have to assess. If we don't do solid long-term planning and funding that, we're just going to have to do that again. So
we're going to have to go through another 25 years of
assessments because we didn't have good stewards of the city. So quite honestly, where we are now is we want to replace all debt with long-term planning and funding those long-term plans.
Wow.
And we want to eliminate debt. It's a stated goal of the City Council of Crystal to get rid of debt.
So you're talking bonds, all of it.
Bonds.
So where are we in the City of Crystal with that? Because I know the pool bonds have to be close to being...
They'll be... I think they're closed out.
Oh, okay.
I think they're closed out this year.
And we paid for the Public Works building with no bonding, which was another issue that drove us all nuts.
Did we bond the solar panels?
No.
We allegedly only paid for part of that, unless, of course, you actually use electricity. Then you paid for the rest of it.
Right.
But I guess my question is, outside of say the street reconstruction, which is going to take a while for all that to be paid off and back and all that. Where are we with debt in the city?
We don't have any.
We don't.
We don't have.
Oh, the debt's on the property owner with the street reconstruction, right?
The debt is only associated with the streets now.
Oh, okay.
We've prepaid everything else and paid off that debt. So we are going to A, not create new debt. B, pay off existing debt early. And we'll get there. It's going to take 10 years probably.
So, just to allay the fears of some former elected officials that have spoken out, if we have a water crisis, we're on our way to being able to in cash pay for the repairs.
No, that's not true. That's not true. We are already able to pay for any water costs.
See, look at that.
You're wrong again. Great.
Wow.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, and I'm just giving you the benefit of the doubt that you're at least socking the money away.
So here's a discussion.
Yeah.
We increased the water bills pretty dramatically about 2 years ago, and then we froze our ability to increase those rates for 2 years because we knew it was a big hit. But
Right.
what was included in there was the infrastructure piece of it. We had the problem with our source mains coming from Minneapolis,
Right.
and we had the problems in Robbinsdale, and that was very public and a big deal.
Not
We
to
had
mention creating the backup water supply, which we didn't have for
Right.
the wells.
ever since we went on the system in the 60s.
And we sit on a huge water aquifer.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
So now we have wells for backup, and now we have funded the major main coming from Minneapolis. But what we also did, we kept that in there, so because we know that the grid inside of the city of Crystal, it's going bad, it's going bad, it's going bad, and more and more are going to fail. So that money is already in place. We can still screw it up as a government if we decide. Because if we choose not to increase water costs as they increase from Minneapolis, that's going to eat away at that money that we're saving for infrastructure.
Right.
So you're going to start to see again this year a little
that
bit.
that was part of the backup water supply in the first place. Minneapolis wanted to create one in charge of the suburbs.
Yeah.
That was how it came about.
And quite honestly,
And we need one anyway. I mean, you can't.
quite honestly, if there's a crisis and it's affecting Minneapolis and Crystal, who's going to get that water? Is it going to be Minneapolis or Crystal? If there's a limited amount,
Right.
if it doesn't match the current
take a
supply,
guess.
it's going to be Minneapolis.
Right.
We need to have our own, and we do. So that's been done.
Fantastic. That's great.
Oh, funny.
So I know that there are other costs then that they're talking about that eventually we'll need a new police station or this or that. So we're making adjustments for that now, right? So that
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like future. What's the future look like?
yeah, let's address it that way.
We
All right.
did the public works
rather than
building.
specifics. Let talk
Yeah.
about the
All right.
future.
So I have this nice saying I say. You've already heard me say it a few times that we're replacing debt with long-term planning. And you're talking about what is our long-term planning? Are we going to build a police station? What are we going to do?
Right.
Are we going to move some salt storage sheds? Where are our big buck items going to be? We're going to do an assessment and find out exactly, when these needs come, and then fund them. There's no plans on the council to build a new police department yet. There just isn't. We're not having those conversations yet. It's a little early. But we do know within the next year and a half, we're going to have a very good idea as to what projects we're going to want to fund. And then we're going to have to fund them. We talked about, are we going to cut taxes in Crystal? Well, actually, no, we're not. Not yet. Because we have the issue of, okay, we used to just get debt because we didn't have the money. Now we're going to use cash. Well, we have to get the cash. So any money we're saving, for example, the pool bond you're talking about, that's its own line on the tax bill.
Its own levy.
It's its own levy. We're going to
We should say it was voted in.
It was
back
voted
in
in.
the 90s.
But what's going to happen is that levy is going to expire, and it could be a tax cut. In my initial gut thing is, great, we got a tax cut. Well, we're going to increase the levy by that much, the general levy by that much. And the reason we're going to do it is because otherwise we can't fund the street reconstruction, or we can't fund the future building, or we can't fund the future roads. So we're going to have all these different projects that are going to happen whether we do it via debt or whether we do it via cash, and we're going to start saving for those. And if the money isn't there, it's going to have to wait. Because seriously, the shape that the Public Works building was in, it went beyond its useful life. There were some things that really needed to...
I took a tour of that building. When I was on the planning commission,
we are nowhere...
There was gum and duct tape on the wall.
We are nowhere close to that kind of deterioration with any other building. But as we approach that, we're going to have a plan. I mean, we're talking about 30 years out for street reconstruction. We have to have a plan starting within the next couple years to start to fund that.
Oh, no, we can just assess again. What are you talking about?
That's a huge expense.
Every generation has to pay an assessment.
People think that we raised taxes last year. The number on our general levy was, I don't know, what, 7.6, 7.8, something like that.
Which affects everybody differently.
Yes, of course it does. But the bottom line is, what we didn't talk about was the assessments that we cut. All those assessments for maintenance from last year were inside the budget. So all we did was move the assessment onto the tax levy. That pretty much handled that. They're pretty close to equal.
So let me explain this for all of you so that you have a little bit. Some of you are probably worked up at what was just said. that there's no current plan in the very near future to reduce taxes. But let me tell you this way. When things are needed in a city, when things need to be replaced, you are going to pay for them. It doesn't matter when you pay for them, you're going to pay for them. You can either pay for them little by little up front and it will cost X amount, or you can pay for them on the back end, which will be X amount plus Y in interest. Or an assessment, X, Y, and Z, however it comes, as an assessment, as a bond. An assessment and a bond, those are really just proof that your government did not plan ahead.
Exactly.
They are reactionary. They are paying for things they did not plan for.
Exactly.
And I'll tell you what, and I hate bringing up the Public Works building because I already hate that building just because of the discussion. Had we, and we had the schedules, I remember seeing them. Had we bonded for that building,
yes,
even though we had a cash fund set up, that was the case where the city actually did plan for a major building, and then they didn't want to use the money, and it would have taken until 2037 to pay off that building. Now, let me ask a question.
Okay,
if I'm going to buy something for $100. Or I'm going to finance it until the year 2037. In which scenario am I spending less money?
Yeah.
And remember, this is taxpayer money. This is not you and your credit card. This is not you financing a car. This is you taking the cost and putting it on somebody else. We always got to remember that it's not an equivalent. You got to remember you're spending other people's tax dollars here. This isn't your money to just play with, or it's not a monopoly board. And I think there used to be that attitude of let's just bond it. What difference does it make?
And I think that's prevalent all across the United States, and that's why we see failures of infrastructure, is because people did not plan ahead. You have bridges in your city. They're going to have to be replaced. Now, whether that's a state bridge or whether that's a county bridge or whether that's a city bridge, different issue.
You just sit and apply for a grant and wait till you get money sent to you.
That's what they do now. And then they assess or bond what they don't get in grants. But if you have roads, they will have to be replaced. If you have water, sewer, all of that, buildings that for public works, for jails, for city halls, for fire, they need to be replaced. Fire trucks need to be replaced. So if you're foolish enough to sit on that until they need to be replaced, then I'm sorry, you do not have the foresight to be leading a city.
Sounds like my last car.
Yeah. So let's put this in. The cost of not planning, it looks like this. The Public Works facility, these numbers are pretty close. They're not right on, but they're pretty close. Every $2 we put into the project, we're putting $1 into the bank.
Yeah.
Giving it to the bank for interest. Does that make sense?
We're pretty close.
That's a lot of money. $2 for the project, $1 for the banker. Wow. Now, by doing proper planning, we got $3 we're talking about. All three go for the project. That's what we're doing.
Oh, but come on, we got low interest rates, Jim. I mean,
Oh my gosh! In low
it's
interest,
like getting that credit card, that 90-day low interest. Oh, and then all of a sudden it's 29.
And what about our bond rating?
Yeah,
our bond rating is strong. Don't even get me started.
Well, Jim, let me ask you this. I mean, what though the bond rating? I mean, explain for a second. What is that? Who does that? What causes it to go up or down? I mean, can you?
I think you have to have a Series 7.
But you hear a lot about bond rating, but I think a lot of people don't understand.
It's like a credit rating.
Yeah.
We have our credit rating. What is a credit rating? It tells people how well you manage debt. So in order to get a credit rating, you have to go in debt. We at some point might damage that if we're not going into debt anymore. If I had no debt, no house payment, no car payment, any of that stuff, eventually my credit score would go down to 0. But really, so the Standard & Poor's bond rating is that how we handle and manage debt. We got a triple, I'm not going to quote the rating, but we have...
It's very good.
It's very good. And that hasn't been damaged. And it probably won't be damaged because the less debt we use, the more healthy we will become, the less riskier we are as a community.
Right.
And if we hit an economic cycle that affects jobs in a huge way and affects the city and its ability to collect revenue in a big way, it's okay. Because we have that flexibility, we have that cash, we have an emergency fund, we have all this money rather than debt. See, debt is used kind of goofy from a city perspective. If you put it in debt in the form of a bond, it's there. It can't be changed by the next council. So if I'm a guy who wants to see this project, this is my pet project, and nothing's more important than this particular project. Let's say I want to build a park, another huge park like Becker Park. It's going to cost $24 million, and I want to call it Adams Park, right? This is my project. If I can get it into a bond, rather than save for it over 15, 20 years, I'll never get that project done. But if I can get it into a bond, it's done and nobody can change it. And that's how council members of the past thought. That's how mayors in the past thought. They want to lock the citizens into this so it can't be changed. And the only reason I know this is because they said it that way.
Community center.
So I don't know if I answered the question. It's like a credit rating.
Yeah, because I think people hear that and they go, okay, your debt goes away. What does that do to your rating? You borrow a lot. Your rating doesn't necessarily have anything to do with how much debt you have, right? I mean, it's more of a, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're in good or bad financial shape the way we would define it.
Correct.
Am I wrong on that?
Well, there's two sides to it. There's the rating itself. The rating says how well you're managing your debt. If you have a lot of debt, you can still be managing it well.
Yeah, you can still have a good rating.
You can still have a good debt. I mean, we have neighbors to the south that are they're drowning in debt, and their credit rating is good.
Yeah, there's citizens like that. They got 8 credit cards. They pay them all every month.
But they're not. They can't do anything more. Yeah. They have no flexibility. They have no ability to do additional projects until they buy down debt. So it really handcuffs them in their ability to do any type of operations, and God forbid if something dramatic happens that's an emergency that wasn't planned for or saved for because we use debt. If that happens, they're in trouble.
At more debt.
They're looking at more debt. And
you talk about our neighbors to the south. I mean, it might be 30 years before they can change what they're doing because there's so many things 20 years out.
I said in a public meeting that Crystal has committed to becoming a debt-free community, and city manager and some council members, their mouth kind of goes, it dropped. It's like, what? And they wanted to know.
You were speaking a foreign language.
They want to know, what are you doing? And it wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting, I was expecting that's a foreign language. But they're feeling the debt crunch there, and they're looking not necessarily to be debt free, but to at least reduce, and they want to know what we're doing in Crystal.
The council member to the west of you guys who said the same thing at a meeting as well. Look at our neighbors to the east. So I think what's going on is reverberating.
Yeah,
into other
agreed.
places.
Agreed. You know, you guys want to know the change in Crystal. I mean, that's kind of what we started with. The change in Crystal is we have a council that's working together. Not saying they're in lockstep or agreeing with everything. We're having the debates, we're having the fights, but we are working together for the betterment of Crystal. And our staff sees and feels that, and they are working in the same direction as we are. They're getting a clear message, regardless of how long it takes us to give that designation or that direction. They're working the same direction the council's working. We are not dysfunctional in the council, and we are now functional in the council and with staff. We're all pointed the same direction, and it's how we treat people. It's not just about money. It's how we treat people in terms of the money we collect from them, in terms of how we treat them when we talk to them on the phone. If they have a complaint, are we following up? We track complaints now in the council. If there's a complaint, we want to know if something's not getting taken care of. We had no way of tracking that before, but guess what? The list has gone from a couple pages long. We only have one or two each time we get a
I've seen those
report.
on the work sessions.
Yeah, we are.
Just think, no way to track complaints for the people you represent. I mean, what the heck?
Right. And as a council member, you come and you pass that on to staff, and you don't get a message back whether it's been taken care of. Well, now we do. Now we do. Plain language. Plain language is a huge thing. We talk to citizens. We write letters. So in terms they can understand, not necessarily in terms of what the ordinance says and what the lawyer wrote. It's all about how can we help you. Somebody comes in, they want to bring a business in. Well, you can't do that because of this ordinance. You can't do this because of that zoning. Whatever it happens to be that they can't do that. It used to be people would turn around and walk away and think, wow, I thought we could move to Crystal, but we can't. Well, now when they come in and they have a problem with zoning, well, zoning doesn't match, is currently not allowed in zoning this way. However, you could apply for a conditional use permit, and we could show you how we could do it, and you'd have to do this, 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 and this. And it's just a different way of how can we help you? How can we help you? We want you to be a part of our community. We want you to come in here and run your business in Crystal. It's just so much more of a positive experience than it ever was before.
And that's something that I've noticed, that from the time that I've moved here, I mean, I've been in the city for, 18 years plus now, and when I moved there, I didn't think the city really had an identity. There wasn't like something you could point to that when you said Crystal, I mean, yeah, community of blue collar people for the most part, middle income.
I live there.
I want to hear the rest of this one.
But I think now there's beginning to be
There's a buzz.
a character about Crystal, and whether that's the way the government is run or instituting things like the Crystal Ball or things like that I think that we're starting to define as a city who we are a little bit. Can you talk a bit about your community outreach
I would love to.
task force?
I would love to.
Okay.
It's all part of the same philosophy about serving the citizens. It's all about service to others. We have created another task force. It's called the Community Outreach Task Force, and they're responsible for kind of whatever they want. Task force have a lot more leeway than a commission does. And their mission is outreach into the community. They want to get a pool of volunteers to, if they want to run a beef-friendly event, plant flowers for the parks, they can do that. They can run the Crystal Ball. The Crystal Ball was an event at the community center, and it was designed just to have a night out, party with the other neighbors. And we have a flag. They came up with the idea of having a flag. We had some staff help design a flag, and it represents that unity you're talking about. Yeah, we are blue collar a lot of times. We are mostly homes. We are houses in Crystal. And that's our identity. And it's a really cool thing. We're becoming more and more diverse. But the point is, we're also becoming closer and closer. We have Night to Unite that's been going on in all of our communities. But we're taking it to the next step. We're bringing those neighborhoods together. And we're bringing them together at the Crystal Ball. And we're having neighborhood awards. And we're getting to know each other on a more personal level. The outreach that they're doing is designed just for what you're talking about, is to build that community identity, to build that closeness. And I'm also doing some other things, which is to help bring in the diversity, is I'm working with the pastors in the city of Crystal. We come together and we talk about, what are you guys doing? You wouldn't believe the outreach in the churches in Crystal. We have recovery communities, multiple. We have food shelves, multiple, out of churches. We have meals, multiple, out of churches. We have probably 5 different languages spoken in Crystal for services on Sunday. And we're starting to, as we get to know who each other are, the pastors and the other churches, we're starting to see these churches work together on specific outreach. Oh, you have that outreach? We don't do anything for that. Can we send our people over to help you make sandwiches for the homeless? And it's happening. I've seen 2 different churches go to another church to help with that outreach. Wow. And then you have recovery outreach. I'm seeing churches from other communities, New Hope, and within our own community, coming to the churches that specialize in outreach. The things that are happening just based on citizens and based on what's happening in our churches is just incredible. And you feel it. You have a feeling of something's different here. So our next pastor meeting it's going to be in about 3 months, because we just had one. But we're bringing together the community outreach committee and introducing them to the pastors. We've been meeting since October. And now it's time just to say, okay, government doesn't always do things the most efficient way.
What?
We have a lot of people who want to volunteer and do special outreach, and they're afraid of churches because they may not have that faith, or they don't want to be a part of a church. But we're still doing the same kind of outreach. And it doesn't matter what faith you are. Obviously, if you can get like a Pentecostal and a Catholic to come together to serve the homeless, it doesn't matter what your religion is, or even if you have a religion, it's about service. And that is becoming very real in Crystal, how people are serving each other, both at the government level and within the community. So that's...
maybe I'll have to move back.
Maybe you should.
It's
wayward,
it's really
son.
Cool. So I don't know. There's more with the Code Review Task Force, but they got some really enthusiastic people there, and they're not getting directives from the council. They're kind of doing their own thing, what they see best for Crystal.
Yeah, and it's such a change from what commissions and things like that we're doing. Same old thing, the same. I don't know. One commission had 40 members in 5 years or something like that, and I think it's been a huge change. I think to see these task force doing something like that, and not sitting around talking about the last meeting, passing the minutes, and then talking about new business and then adjourning. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? So big things have. Let me just bring it up to like right now. What's going on? You had, I don't know how to frame this, but you had a new council kind of come in, a few new members in 2016, and what are you guys doing? What have you done since then? What's like some short-term things that are going on in the council, other than just doing the code task force and things? Are there any things coming up that people ought to know, go to the meetings for?
It's kind of boring stuff. Well, maybe not for you, but
not at all for me. But,
no. But it's kind of behind the scenes kind of stuff that's going on right now. We are currently using a financial consultant for our finance work. That's changing a lot of things. It's changing some of the metrics we see. It's changing some of the tools that our department heads are using. We're becoming more efficient. We're having better tools to plan with.
Now, see, that's not boring. That's terrific.
Yeah. I did qualify. Not for you. Maybe for the people listening to the podcast. I don't know.
See, I'm into it.
Yeah. But it really is. We are kind of moving into planning mode. Planning and funding. I mean, we've talked a lot about funding. We haven't had a council that can make a decision about funding. I think we're there. Not only are we going to have somebody who can make a decision, we're going to actually have the plans in place to make those decisions. So that's what's happening. We've changed the way we're doing our budget process dramatically. We're starting budgeting already, I think, this month. And usually we don't start talking about budgets till August.
Yeah, we know the big meeting where everybody sits around.
Oh, it's just ridiculous. It's just like playing chess. Yeah, but it's different now because...
and it's such a disservice the way it was.
Yeah.
Right.
Cramming it all because you have to have that preliminary budget done in September.
Right.
It's a state statute.
It is. Mm-hmm. But that's okay. I mean, I'm good with that. But there's a difference of looking at a line item in a specific department and saying, oh, wow, we shouldn't be spending money there. Or we should be giving them more money for that. That's not what the council is. We want to know if we actually experience a cost savings, can we take that cost savings and apply it to some of the things that we're planning for? Those are the back end stuff that we're doing.
In other words, you're not... And you're right. I can remember old work sessions where the council thought their job was to micromanage.
Correct.
Oh, hey, come on. You don't need those handcuffs over there. That officer doesn't need another set. No. Instead of saying, okay, wait a minute. We hired a police chief. Let that person... That's their expertise, not ours.
Right.
So I think that is a big change I've noticed, too, is that it's your job to figure out the budget, not to line by line tell them how many pencils to buy.
Correct, and that's a huge change. And quite honestly, we all come to the table with different expertise, and if you want to go line by line into the budget, half the council's not going to understand it because they're not accountants. I mean, this is raw accounting data. Yeah, it's raw accounting data. But we can understand that we're going to need a little extra money. If we're going to put, for example, for the police having the cams on their uniform, that's a big deal. And those are policy decisions, and that's where we're supposed to remain. And that's we've kind of went back to where we belong.
Wow, that's a lot. I mean, I don't know. Is there anything else before we wrap this up that you want to talk about specifically? Anything that I guess, Andrew, you were kind of going down the road of what's some of the short-term stuff. Is there anything else that sticks out to you? Anything that you guys haven't addressed yet that you're just burning to put some fire behind? Yeah,
there's a lot of things. This is a hard subject for me. The EDA. Economic Development Authority. It's essentially the council. It is the council who are the members of that commission.
Right.
Yeah, but you lose your gavel, Jim.
I do lose my gavel. I'm not sure I'm happy about it because somebody thought it would be a good idea to put Jeff Kolb there.
Oh boy.
And I don't know if that was one of my better choices. Sorry, Jeff. No, it's something in government that I philosophically disagree with, because the job of the EDA is to interfere with the free market.
Right.
And just about anything we do inside the EDA it's manipulating real estate or manipulating how things are going to be zoned or redeveloped. That's kind of their job. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes eminent domain comes in. That tastes horrible in my mouth.
Yep.
A lot of times you're competing with the open market. That tastes horrible in my mouth. Mm-hmm. All these things that just don't represent a free economy are what we're doing in the EDA. Mm-hmm. However, that being said, we still exist and we still have a budget and we're still doing things. What we're doing now in the EDA is it's taking in we're trying to give the city a bit of a facelift. We have some areas of town that are looking worn out and tired. Mm-hmm. We would like to do some streetscape stuff to improve the vitality of those businesses. And so we're going to spend some money doing that. We've got a couple corridors in mind, 36th and Douglas. How can we make that a little bit more attractive? Businesses are doing great there. It's looking pretty tired up across from the park. And what's that park? Is it getting late?
No.
Becker Park.
Becker Park.
Oh,
so that's looking a little old.
That's looking a little old. So we want to freshen
yeah.
that stuff up and make it safer for people to travel. No longer do we have our sidewalks, or are we going to have our sidewalks hidden by berms, so people can safely walk there without being hidden from plain view.
And the EDA used to function a lot of buying and selling property, and I know since you've been the mayor, that's gone way down. I mean, we do it very, very little now. Is that true, or is that? It seems like every EDA meeting. 5 years ago, five properties was bought.
Yeah. Well, so much of that is economically driven. I think you can correlate it to what the economy was like, because we were buying when things were crashing. We had the market; nobody was buying. Loans were hard to get for people to buy houses, and we had some blight that we had the opportunity to pick up next to nothing, and we did that. So I can show you the economic cycle and show how we've bought as things were down and we're selling as things are coming up. And that's a very believable thing. And that's not the whole story. There is a difference in philosophy. There really is.
I get a feeling it would be going on and going on and going on,
Agreed.
Regardless of economic conditions.
There are many times when since I've been mayor that it's come up that, okay, we'd like to buy this. Okay, well, how long has it been on the market? Well, it's been on the market for a day. Well, do you know, is there anybody interested? Well, we know there's an investor who's made an offer. Okay, let the market handle it. If it's still there in a month, we can have another conversation. So exactly what you're talking about, they want to go ahead and keep buying, but we're there kind of as a last resort. If the market isn't taking care of itself and it's really blighted, that's the role of the city. That's the piece of it that I can stomach. Other people disagree with me that it's more than that. It's about creating the economic map or of what the city's going to be like in the future with redevelopment. It could be that way if that's what you wanted to do, but you already know that I philosophically totally disagree with that type of government tinkering.
I can recall one work session about maybe 2010-ish where a resident passed away at a house. His children or whoever the house went to came to the city. The house never got put on the market at all, which is something I question the legality of. I mean,
right.
And of course the property was bought. I don't remember where it was. I don't want to say anything wrong, but literally it passed to the city, and I don't know what happened with it. I assume it was torn down and rebuilt, but I don't think the house was in the best shape either, and maybe that's why the descendants wanted to sell it. But still, there's a role for the market there,
right?
And there's an obligation to the market, right, before it simply goes into government's hands.
Yeah, and I know there have been other instances like that. I mean, the whole Kavanaugh project, I know that there was some shady EDA stuff going on with the whole Crystal Medical Center, where there were people across the street that didn't want to sell, but they got kind of coerced into it, and that doesn't seem to be the policy.
I'm not familiar with that.
You were not there at the time.
I have no idea how that happened, nor did I revisit it.
No, I wouldn't. It's best left in the history books.
Yeah,
that's That's not typically.
Burn those pages.
That's typically not what we're doing.
No.
So
Wow. So, anything else before we close this out that you want to tout or that we overlooked?
no, I think you guys have been pretty thorough. We've talked about finances. We talked about the spirit of Crystal and what's happening, just as a community, in how we've become more of a service-oriented government. Consequently, or by design, we are becoming a smaller government that's more focused on what we're supposed to be focused on, and we're doing it with a little bit more efficiency, both financially and practically with the administrative piece. We do have an outstanding staff in the city of Crystal, and it's great to see all of us working in the same direction. It's something that you would have asked me 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Is this where you're going to be in 5 years? No way. No way. So I share your sentiments with how far the city has come.
Wow. So, anything personally you wanna rep a website, book that you're writing, movie deals, anything like that?
Nothing like that, I'm afraid.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in case you, for some strange reason, missed the beginning of the podcast, we've had Mayor Jim Adams from Crystal on with us, and wow, what an amazing turnaround in a city that was kind of at odds and just wasn't.
We were hopeless. Let's just say it out loud.
Just functionally hopeless. That's good.
It wasn't a very happy place to live, and it was pretty divisive. And now I think that, like you said, Mayor, that people are buying into this whole service idea and serving one another, and they're involved. Residents of Crystal, I think, have always been more involved than a lot of the other cities right around it, and whether that's commissions or the VFW or
Lions,
frolics, all of that stuff. But I think even more so now, and I think it's helping to shape the character of the city. So I just want to say congratulations on that, and I think it's been a great turn of events.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, that's another episode for us. If you know of anything going on in your city, get a hold of us. COMMsolutionsMN@gmail.com. COMMsolutionsMN@gmail.com. And we'll tackle it.
And remember, a friend in need is a pest.
No.
You can get bad.
Oh, my word. I don't even know where to go. It's like 12:30 in the morning, and we're delirious. All right. Our blog is at COMMsolutionsMN.com. You can read all this stuff there. This is coming out sometime soon. We'll see you in another week. Bye.